The night was draped in an ominous stillness as Vane walked through the desolate streets of a small, forgotten town. The feeble glow of flickering streetlights cast long shadows that seemed to dance with the whispering wind. Vane, a solitary figure with a troubled past, ambled through the narrow alleyways, haunted by the echoes of his own memories. As he wandered, the cobbled streets seemed to tighten around him, suffocating the air. The occasional distant hoot of an owl heightened the eeriness of the night. Vane's steps quickened, driven by an unexplained unease that gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. A distant sound echoed, a faint cry that seemed to emerge from the shadows. Vane hesitated, his senses on high alert. The cry repeated, growing louder. It was a woman's voice, trembling with fear. The darkness seemed to swallow it whole, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Against his better judgment, Vane followed the haunting cry through a labyrinth of narrow passages. As he turned a corner, he caught sight of a flicker of movement, a silhouette disappearing into the inky blackness. The woman's voice grew more desperate, pleading for help. A surge of adrenaline propelled Vane forward, each step echoing in the silence of the night. The trail led him to a dilapidated building at the edge of town, its windows shattered, and its facade crumbling. Vane pushed open the creaking door, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. The air inside was thick with an otherworldly stillness that sent shivers down his spine. He ascended a decaying staircase, the sound of his footsteps reverberating through the empty halls. The cries became more distinct, guiding him to a room at the end of the corridor. He cautiously pushed the door open, revealing a scene straight from his darkest nightmares. A pale, disheveled woman huddled in the corner, her eyes wide with terror. Vane recognized her as Amelia, a local waitress who had vanished without a trace weeks ago. The room reeked of decay, and strange symbols adorned the peeling wallpaper. Before Vane could react, the door slammed shut behind him, trapping him in the suffocating darkness. Amelia's eyes locked onto Vane's, a silent plea for salvation. The room seemed to close in, the walls pressing against Vane's sanity. He fumbled for his phone, desperate for a sliver of light, but the screen remained ominously black. Panic clawed at him as he grappled with the reality that something unnatural had ensnared him in its web. Whispers emerged from the shadows, unintelligible and chilling. Vane strained to understand, but the voices seemed to emanate from the very walls, weaving a tapestry of dread around him. The symbols on the wallpaper began to glow faintly, pulsating with an eerie energy. Amelia, her voice barely above a whisper, recounted a tale of a secret society that thrived in the shadows of the town. A society that dabbled in forbidden rituals, drawing power from the fears of the unsuspecting residents. Vane's past, it seemed, was intricately entwined with the malevolent forces that lurked in the heart of the town. As Amelia spoke, the room came alive with spectral apparitions, flickering in and out of existence. Vane felt a chill down his spine as faces from his past materialized, figures he had long buried in the recesses of his mind. The whispers grew louder, mocking him with fragments of forgotten sins. Determined to unravel the mysteries that bound him, Vane delved into the grim history of the town. He discovered a series of unsolved disappearances that spanned decades, each connected to the sinister society. The walls seemed to close in tighter as he unearthed a dark pact that tied his family to the malevolent forces. The symbols on the wallpaper began to writhe, twisting into grotesque shapes. Vane, guided by an indomitable will, chanted a counter-incantation he discovered in a dusty tome. The room convulsed, resisting the intrusion of ancient words meant to break the shackles that bound him. As the last syllable escaped his lips, the symbols shattered, and the room returned to a deathly silence. The door, which had seemed impenetrable, swung open, releasing Vane from the grip of the paranormal. He stumbled into the corridor, gasping for breath, his mind reeling from the unearthly ordeal. The town, once draped in silence, came alive with the distant wails of sirens. Vane emerged from the decaying building, haunted by the knowledge that the past could no longer be buried. The night had whispered its secrets, and Vane was left to navigate the chilling aftermath of a town consumed by shadows. As Vane stepped into the moonlit night, the town's twisted history unfolded before him like a spectral tapestry. The wails of sirens drew nearer, cutting through the oppressive silence that had blanketed the streets. Red and blue lights flashed, casting an unsettling glow on the dilapidated buildings. Amelia clung to Vane, her eyes still harboring a trace of fear, but also a glimmer of gratitude. The night had unearthed more than buried secrets. It had woven an unbreakable bond between the two survivors. Together, they navigated the labyrinthine streets, guided by the distant echoes of approaching law enforcement. The townspeople, oblivious to the paranormal forces that lurked beneath the surface, emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion. As Vane and Amelia weaved through the gathering crowd, their eyes met those of the onlookers, eyes that reflected a mix of curiosity, fear, and suspicion. The police arrived, their stern faces revealing a reluctance to confront the inexplicable. Vane, driven by a newfound determination, shared the revelations he had uncovered, exposing the malevolent society that had plagued the town for generations. The air grew heavy with disbelief, but a seasoned detective, drawn by a gut feeling, decided to delve deeper into the enigma. Together with the detective, Vane and Amelia revisited the eerie building, its secrets now laid bare. The symbols that once pulsed with dark energy had faded, leaving behind a sinister residue of the supernatural. The detective, undeterred by the paranormal remnants, pieced together the fragments of a puzzle that spanned decades. As dawn broke, the town stood at the precipice of a new reality. The malevolent society, unmasked and dismantled, left behind scars that ran deep. Vane, once a reluctant protagonist, found himself at the center of a town's redemption. Days turned into weeks, and Vane worked tirelessly to rebuild the shattered community. The townspeople, shaken by the revelations, slowly embraced the healing embrace of daylight. The shadows that had long haunted the streets began to dissipate, replaced by a hesitant optimism. Amelia, freed from the shackles of her ordeal, became a pillar of strength for those who had suffered in silence. Together with Vane, she led the town toward a path of recovery, their shared past forging an unbreakable alliance against the ghosts that lingered in the collective memory. As seasons changed, the town transformed, shedding the vestiges of its haunted history. The once silent streets echoed with the laughter of children and the hum of everyday life. Vane, now an unlikely hero, walked through the revitalized town, the weight of the past lifting with each step. The city was draped in the ebony shroud of the night as Manny hurried down the desolate street. The chilling wind whispered through the empty alleyways, causing the shadows to dance eerily on the damp pavement. Manny, a weary man with a troubled past, felt a shiver crawl down his spine, but he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that he was being watched. As he quickened his pace, the flickering streetlights overhead cast long, sinister silhouettes that seemed to follow his every step. Manny's breath hung in the frigid air, forming a misty cloud that obscured his view. He tightened the collar of his coat, attempting to ward off both the cold and the creeping sense of unease. His footsteps echoed in the lonely night, creating an ominous rhythm that resonated with the beating of his anxious heart. The storefronts lining the street were all closed, their darkened windows reflecting Manny's own troubled expression. He tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination playing tricks on him, but deep down, a primal fear rooted itself in his mind. As he approached an ancient and dilapidated building, Manny noticed a dim light emanating from a shattered window on the second floor. The light flickered like a dying flame, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance in silent mockery. Intrigued and unnerved, Manny hesitated before deciding to investigate the source of the mysterious glow. The creaking staircase groaned beneath his weight as he ascended to the second floor. The air grew heavier with each step, and the unsettling feeling of being watched intensified. The light led him to a partially open door at the end of the corridor, revealing a small, cluttered room bathed in an otherworldly glow. In the center of the room stood a cracked and ancient mirror, its surface reflecting Manny's own bewildered expression. The source of the light remained elusive, as if it emanated from some unseen dimension. As he approached the mirror, Manny felt an unspoken dread settle over him. The reflection in the mirror seemed to distort, revealing glimpses of a past he had long buried. A sudden chill ran down Manny's spine as he stared into the haunted reflection. The room seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, and the air became thick with an indescribable tension. He couldn't tear his gaze away from the mirror, as if it held the key to a long-buried secret. In the dim light, Manny's reflection began to morph, taking on the visage of a younger, more carefree version of himself. Memories long forgotten flooded back. The laughter of friends, the warmth of love, and the innocence of a time before life took its toll. A haunting voice echoed in his mind, whispering the names of those he had lost and the mistakes he couldn't undo. As Manny grappled with the spectral images in the mirror, the room seemed to come alive with the whispers of the past. Shadows danced on the walls, forming grotesque shapes that mirrored the darker corners of his memories. The air became suffocating, carrying with it the weight of guilt and remorse. A sudden knock on the door shattered the trance, and Manny recoiled from the mirror. The room returned to its mundane state, the haunting glow dissipating. Hesitant, he approached the door and opened it to find an empty hallway, the only sound the distant howling of the wind. Determined to unravel the mysteries of the night, Manny ventured further into the building. The corridors twisted and turned, leading him deeper into the heart of the haunted structure. Each step revealed more of the building's sordid history, tales of tragedy, betrayal, and lives unraveling in the shadows. As Manny descended into the bowels of the building, he felt a presence, an unseen force guiding him through the labyrinthine passages. The walls seemed to close in on him, whispers of sorrow and despair echoing through the empty halls. With each revelation, Manny couldn't escape the feeling that the night held the key to his redemption or his undoing. Manny's heart pounded in his chest as he navigated the labyrinth of the building. The oppressive atmosphere clung to him, and the air felt charged with an otherworldly energy. He stumbled upon a room that seemed to pulse with a malevolent force, its door slightly ajar. Hesitating for a moment, Manny pushed the door open, revealing a room bathed in an ominous red glow. The walls were adorned with faded photographs and newspaper clippings, each telling a tale of tragedy that unfolded within these haunted walls. The room seemed frozen in time, preserving the sorrows and secrets of those who had come before. In the center of the room, Manny discovered an old, tattered journal. Its pages were filled with the desperate scrawls of someone who had lost their grip on reality. As he leafed through the pages, the stories unfolded like a macabre tapestry, intertwining with his own past in ways that sent shivers down his spine. The journal spoke of a curse that bound the building, an ancient malevolence that fed on the suffering of those who entered. Manny's eyes widened in horror as he recognized names and events that mirrored his own life. It was as if the building held a dark mirror to his soul, reflecting the shadows he thought he had left behind. Determined to break free from the malevolent grip, Manny delved deeper into the mysteries of the building. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, the echoes of his footsteps blending with the ghostly whispers that surrounded him. He uncovered hidden passages, each revealing a layer of the building's sordid past. As Manny reached the heart of the structure, the air became suffused with an unearthly energy. The walls seemed to breathe with a life of their own, and the shadows coalesced into spectral forms that danced in the corners of his vision. The oppressive weight on his chest intensified, and Manny felt the presence of something ancient and vengeful. In a room bathed in a ghostly light, Manny confronted the source of the malevolence, a spectral figure that materialized before him. The entity bore the anguish of decades, its eyes filled with a haunting sadness. Manny realized that it was the embodiment of the building's cursed history, a tormented soul seeking release. With a trembling voice, Manny spoke words of empathy and understanding. He acknowledged the pain and suffering that lingered in the building's walls and offered solace to the tormented spirit. As he did, the room seemed to exhale a sigh of relief, the red glow fading away. In the aftermath, the building fell silent. The weight lifted from Manny's shoulders, and the oppressive atmosphere dissipated. The spectral figure vanished, leaving behind an eerie calm. Manny emerged from the building, the first light of dawn breaking on the horizon. The city awoke from its slumber, oblivious to the horrors that transpired in the night. Manny, forever changed by the ordeal, walked away with a newfound understanding of his own past and the ability to confront the shadows that haunted him. The building, once a vessel of malevolence, stood silent and empty, its curse broken by a man who dared to face the darkest corners of his soul.